Okay.
Now the other half.
Yeah. Hello everybody. My name is Charles, and yes, Annette is my other half, and I suppose I'm here to tell you a little bit about my life on Earth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I suppose what we've seen from Annette was a female sort of experience, and then of course you lived at a similar time as she, didn't you? But now you've got sort of a completely different reasons why you became mind dominant. Yeah.
It's a good assignment that you gave us today, because I had to take myself back to that time on Earth, and it's such a long time ago now, and I've forgotten
memories.
Yeah.
500-year-old memories, you see. So it's hard to remember sometimes, particularly when you're very happy, right?
Yeah. And I feel a completely different man to what I was then. So I suppose I should say that the society that I grew up in, I had a much freer life than Annette, but no more emotional, certainly. I was raised in some affluence. But by the time I reached sort of my maturity or manhood, I had no, even before then, I would say as a very small child, I knew that a male persona shouldn't have any feeling. In fact, I would say by the time I was 5 or 6, if you had asked me what I felt, I couldn't tell you. The idea of anyone asking you how you felt as a male would be preposterous.
As if that would ever happen.
Yeah. I really lived my life on Earth thinking that I didn't have any emotion, it felt like. And that was one of my biggest challenges when I entered the spirit life, was that when I met spirits who, maybe I should rewind a little bit, but
jumping ahead,
yes,
quite a long time.
Yes. So I grew. I would have called myself a master of industry on the Earth. I was a success,
What kind of industry was it?
Sort of shipping and trade and
So family fairly wealthy.
Yes. And I had personal wealth, and I had some church life, I didn't feel so...
Were you married?
Yes, I had a family.
Had children?
Yep. I didn't feel so abused by my society by any measure. I felt like I was rewarded for this very stoic man that I was. But again, it seems strange to even call it a stoic man, because I just thought I was being a man. And I really had no awareness of anything but my intellect for my entire life on Earth. And I lived to 75, thereabouts. Quite an old man at that time.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but I was...
unusual.
Yeah. I was... I sort of outlived a lot of my family. My wife and a couple of my children had already died by the time I died. And I felt... I didn't feel. I was. It was probably a better way of saying it, But when I passed, then...
the question I forgot to ask your soulmate too was, did you have any belief in God at all at the time before you passed, or...?
Well, yes, I did. I sort of believed in the doctrine of the Catholic Church with my mind.
So triune God.
Yes.
Jesus
heaven,
saving you.
hell.
That kind of thing.
But there was absolutely no emotional or heartfelt engagement with that. It was just the facts of life. And so when it came to the time of my death, I wouldn't say that I faced it with grace. I hung on because I really didn't I didn't know, I suppose. I believed, but I didn't know.
Sort of that you sort of didn't know what to believe in your feelings.
Yeah.
But you didn't even consider your feelings enough to even validate them.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I too entered the spirit life into quite a cold place. I had sinned a lot more than Annette. In terms of, I'd taken a lot of actions in my life that were exploiting others, and I had been very selfish in my dealings with everyone, really, and I didn't have a high opinion of myself in terms of that I thought I was morally wonderful, but I just didn't really think about it.
You didn't think it mattered?
No.
Oh.
I would say I had just almost no awareness of myself. I was really just operating in my society in the way that I thought that I should, and thinking thoughts and making what I called reasonable decisions. And
to your own benefit.
To my own benefit, which seemed reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I entered the spirit life, there was a lot of restriction on me that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I felt, but I didn't feel much about it. I thought confused. I thought, what's going on here? I didn't associate where I was with hell because it didn't meet with the priest's description of a fiery place. I wasn't in a fiery place. I was in a cold, damp, smelly place where, there was rats and, it just was yuck. And
a big contrast from your rich.
That's right. I couldn't
palatial home and on earth. Yeah.
Eat the food that I was accustomed to eating. I didn't have people bringing me things or looking after me or tucking me in. I had none of that. Yeah. And I just thought, I don't understand, and it took me years actually to really even have my tantrum about that, even have my indignation about that.
Yeah.
Because I had reached a state of being really very numb. I tried to talk with people about it. I tried to see people and say, well, what's happening here?
Yeah.
But obviously, as you've alluded to in some of your discussion today, I wasn't very sincere about getting the answers.
Yeah.
I wanted any answer except that it had something to do with me.
Or to do with your moral condition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it took some time. But eventually, I obviously gained sincerity through how long it was that I was feeling like uncomfortable and in this smelly place. So it was quicker for me to move, if you like, than Annette. But I certainly, when I first, someone first came and told me that it was to do with my earth life, that was shocking to me. I was genuinely shocked because I thought there was absolutely nothing wrong with how I'd lived my life on earth. But that began, and again, it was still an intellectual process I began to examine things like morals and if I had really met with the requirements of a moral man, and I began to have lessons with actually spirits who didn't have a relationship with God, but who were in the second sphere or the third sphere or the fourth sphere, people who came to
So they were teaching you to use your mind to try to solve these problems now that you could see were moral.
Yes.
Yep.
To examine my actions.
Yep.
They were teaching me to examine my actions.
Good eye.
So again, we were in a completely intellectual realm and just looking at actions that I had taken, and being what I thought was a reasonable man, I began to see, okay, if you're saying this and saying that, and they would show me pictures of things that people who'd been in my employ had gone through,
or because of the choices you made,
yes.
how other people were harmed.
Yes.
Yep.
And I could see, okay, logically there's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
still using your mind
yes.
to logically work out there's a problem, and they're trying to help you with their mind too to see there's a problem.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, and actually there was some improvement to where I was.
Yeah.
It was very slow, very gradual, but I thought, okay, well, I've got to keep doing this.
So at this stage, what sphere were you in?
I'm still in the
still
first
in the first
sphere.
And how long have we now covered?
50 years maybe.
Yeah.
It's probably It only took me a year or two to get started,
Yeah.
but then it was very slow going.
Yeah,
you know,
gotcha.
after that.
Yeah.
Yep.
As it is.
Yes. Yeah. But of course, there came a turning point. Yeah. So I was very engaged in this intellectual education, and
So what was the turning point?
yeah.
That's what everyone's interested in.
Yeah.
Interested, yeah.
Well, it took a lot for a man like me, or the man that I was. And what happened was that I was having these classes, if you like, with these. I was a student now, and I was being shown different things that happened. And one of the things that I was shown was I had a little girl, my wife had a little girl who died very shortly after she was born. And of course, I wasn't there when it happened. And I was very cold to my wife about the event. I blamed her, and also I thought, well, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal, this thing that had happened. And I was shown in the course of these lessons the effect that it had on my wife, but also on the child. And it surprisingly, something stirred in me. It was I felt something, and I hadn't done that for as long as I could remember, but perhaps it was this working upon the morality, and I began to, I had begun to sort of see that maybe my definition of right and wrong was not correct, and then to be shown the level of suffering that my wife went through after that event, and to be shown the level of rejection that my daughter had felt from me around that event. It was quite extreme, and I found myself crying. And that was a very alien thing for me. I couldn't understand what even crying was. And
So it'd be the first time you cried for how many years?
probably over 100, since I was a small child on earth. Yeah, and it was such a... an alien thing for me that it really, I almost went into shock. I felt sad. I felt very, very sad. And then I went into shock of what was that and what had happened. But as soon as I had allowed that, I suddenly felt the presence of my daughter near me. Yeah.
And then that caused you to cry some more.
Yes, I'm still emotional about it now.
Yeah,
I'm more
yeah.
with joy now that we had the chance to have a relationship, and she's the one who told me about God, who showed me about God,
So quite special in that regard for you.
Yeah, it's a very special moment in our soul's history for me. Because not only did it bring me to God, it brought me eventually to Annette, but with Carol, I could have a relationship with my daughter, and it was a turning point. You understand the turning points in your soul.
And also how special the people who trigger them come to be for you.
Yes. Precious. It was a precious time, and I think that things moved quicker for me, a lot quicker after that. But I have had a lot of repentance to deal with, a lot of repentance. And that's
the repentance feelings were all sad, weren't they? They're all sad. So
pain,
a lot of pain and suffering.
And just bringing that, initially when I started that repentance process, I would get sort of. I would sort of open up enough to feel the wrong, to feel a sense of the wrong. And then I would waste too much time in regret. And I had to learn that, no, this repentance process is just being willing to go to the pain that was created, and the grief and the cause of why
instead
it happened.
of just living a life and going, I feel terrible about it, and just keep feeling terrible about it.
Exactly.
Without actually feeling anything.
Yeah. And so, But I felt my relationship with God really just open up through that process, and now God is who I rely on, just absolutely, and trust. And the idea of my mind is sort of a crazy memory in some ways, you know,
Yeah. And isn't it crazy when you look back on it, you sort of think, why did I rely on it so much? It was so, it only was responding to injuries, and why rely on it? You think things are reliable, but they're not that reliable.
No. And, you know, there's a terrible sadness as well of having relied on my intellect and having just really honoured the stoic existence that I had. It enabled me to perpetrate so much harm against others.
Yep.
Because
your mind justified every decision.
My mind justified it, and my stoic kind of existence detuned me from the natural, not only the conscience, but just the
results of
the emotional observation of the results. You know, people could be standing in front of me suffering, and I couldn't feel anything about that. I didn't feel anything about that. And so the sadness of being allowing that intellectual existence to really foster my career of sin in a way that I could, as soon as I made that breakthrough with emotion and with God, I just could never think of doing one of the things again. Yeah.
That's right. Once you feel it in your heart that it's wrong, that's a lot different, isn't it, than even trying to intellectually analyse whether it's wrong.
Yes, when I consider the lessons I was having in the first sphere about right and wrong and morality, that was still very intellectually driven. I was attempting to learn, you know, and I was progressing slowly, but the difference between that and the feeling of, you know, when my daughter came and the experience of seeing what my wife went through, the emotional connection to that it just paled in comparison to helping me to understand how wrong how I had been and what I had done was, compared to when I was doing the lessons before, where I could intellectually see something was wrong, but there wasn't the sense that I can never do it again until I'd had that emotional connection.
Yeah. All right. Well, perhaps if we can, Charles, just again have a few questions from the audience if they would like to ask you something. Okay. Thanks, Pierre.
So when you first passed in the spirit world, like 1 year after, you had some help from spirit, but you said it was very slow. And what could have been different to get help from divine love spirits in the beginning, or there was maybe some help you didn't see, or because it went much faster after? It was.
Yeah, I think that the help was given to me based on what I desired at the time. So I definitely was against the emotion, anything emotional, and also I didn't really have any feeling for God. So I've no doubt that my divine love friends would have been there should I have wanted them, and as soon as I did, they were. But before I wanted that, I was given the help that I desired, which was to figure this out with my mind, with my intellect, and so I had help to do that. And now I can see that was a part of my stepping stones, if you like, to getting to the point. Yeah. I was coming from such a cold and shut down place. I'm not sure that I could have. I couldn't long in that place.
He wouldn't have responded to divine love spirits helping him.
My desire was to solve the problem with my mind. Yeah.
Up the back there. Okay, keep your hand up, sir.
Do you and Annette know, or are you aware of the emotions or things you still have to go through to go on to the 8th sphere?
Yeah, I would say that we're in a process of understanding that, but we have some awareness that it's about, two things. One is about it's releasing, in a very broad sense, releasing the last of the fears in us. But those fears relate to complete reliance on God and complete living in the soul. So there's still some feeling of wanting to be self-reliant rather than God-reliant, although it's extremely diminished. And still, in that self-reliance, I suppose you could say that there's still a feeling that the mind is going to be safer, or the mind needs to be a checking mechanism as we follow God's way, or as we follow our emotional desires with God. And there's a fear, just a final fear of letting that go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mark down the front. Here else. That's it.
I would like for you to talk about the perception of it being easier to progress in the spirit world versus being on earth.
Yeah.
Good question.
It's Annette and I talked about this as we got this sort of auspicious invitation today, that no, it's not easier in the spirit life, and in some ways, because there is no avenue for I suppose it's a double-edged sword, you could say, in the spirit world. There's no avenue for avoidance. And if you're humble, then that's a good thing. But if you're very much set in your ways, as I was, as Annette was, as most people are when they enter the spirit life, you continue on in this way that you've been, and there's no challenge to it. The beauty of the earth life is that there's people in different conditions of love all around you all of the time. And you have this opportunity to sort of make mistakes, fall down, get up, try again, try something else. And it's a sort of a very forgiving environment in that way. And you can speak with people who are above your condition or below your condition. But I, in my observations of the earth and in my experience, I would say progression, wherever you do it, requires persistence. It requires desire, strength of will. Even in my earliest progression, which wasn't the divine love way, it required those qualities from me. And whether you're on earth or in the spirit life, you need those qualities and to develop those qualities.
And if I can also say for Charles that when he did it the natural love way with his mind, it even required more persistence than he eventually had to have when doing it with God's help.
Very true.
Because it was slower. And so you can't, you're trying hard to make progress, and you just in 1 year you make this tiny little bit of progress.
And there's less reward. There's less reward doing it the natural way, because even though your surroundings improve, it's very gradual, and there's not the feeling relief that I wouldn't have called it that at the time because I was so detuned. But once I made that shift, even when I was in the repentance process, of which there was a lot, the relief each time that I engaged that process was very great. And yeah, and that's the same process. I see some people now engaging that on earth as I had to do in the spirit world, and it's the same process. So I would just encourage you all, because the other side of it is when you progress on earth, you start reducing your it's a French word, I can't say it, but you're reducing your tally of sin, if you like, you know, as soon as you start to progress. But for myself, I had 75 years of sin. And then I started after, you know, I still had to deal with that 75 years. If you start now, you start reducing what you have to do, what you have to deal with.
So if I can ask a follow-up question. So in the spirit world, you immediately see your surroundings change as you process. But in the physical world, I don't know, is there maybe a lack of humility in feeling the reward as you do the work?
Yeah, I think when you really progress, you feel the difference in yourself, and your surroundings do actually change.
Yep. You attract different people in
Yes.
different surroundings. Yep.
Yes. So there is, even if there's disharmony or dissent in people around you, your environment does change because you love yourself or you love others more. There is an improvement. So if you're not seeing that, then you're not yet progressing.
Yeah, a very important statement he just made. If you're not seeing or feeling on God's way, if you're not seeing or feeling an improvement, then it means you're not on the way. Franz, this will be our last question.
So from your point of view, looking at our group, which is quite a variety, I guess, what would be your or the practical advice from your side to us?
Sure. I would say that you can, because I understand that Jesus has been speaking to you a lot about the mind. And that is clearly this judgment of emotion and the desire to intellectually rationalize or reason is a commonality, not with everyone here, but with a large majority. And something I would encourage everyone to do is to begin to be sensitive to the restraints that the mind is placing on you. So when I lived my life on earth, I was very restrained. I know Annette called it a cage. I would call it even worse, like a prison that I lived in, but I did not want to be aware of how restrained I was. And something you each have the opportunity to do with now the insights you have is you each need to begin this feeling journey and this trust of this feeling journey with God. And part of starting that can be to begin to feel the constraints that the mind is having on you. Feel the way that you draw back from opportunity, that you draw back from emotion, that you draw back from people, These are all operations of fear and the mind. And the more you can begin to feel the discomfort with your life, because there is discomfort. The problem in this region is that there's many avenues to avoid your discomfort. But if you instead tune into the discomfort that is sort of spiritual discomfort, it becomes a motivating factor. It becomes something that you can work with to improve your desire to experiment with something new. The other thing that I would say is that the mind wants certainty. The mind wants immediacy. And something that I had to learn in my spirit life, and is advice for each of you, is to come to recognize that God's way, especially when you're coming from this stoic background, you will make missteps. You will make mistakes. You will think that you're getting it or you're on the right track, and then you'll realize, oh, it didn't work, or I didn't see improvement, or maybe that wasn't my conscience, or all these kinds of things. The mind's tendency is to say, that's it, it's not true. That's it,
give up everything.
That's it, it's not working. And God's way and the emotional way is much kinder to yourself and much more explorative, much more curious, much more willing to have another go and to learn through that process, because I had to become to learn in my feeling state, not in my mind. And the mind keeps wanting to undermine the feeling state and say you shouldn't trust it. But actually, the more I just engaged with experiments, I mentioned that I wasted time in regret a lot. And I had to sort of go through that and then realize, oh, this isn't repentance. This is me getting stuck in regret. But I didn't use, by that stage, I wouldn't let my mind tell me, well, you should give up and go back to analysing things. I said, okay, well, I have to try it differently. I have to, explore my emotions further than what I have been. And it's this gradual, it's sort of like you're voyaging into this unknown territory, which is your emotional state that you've stayed shut off from for so long. And the mind keeps wanting to keep you in this little island of restriction. And you need to begin to break down the mind's messages about that experimental process, because a lot of you you try a little bit and then think it doesn't work and back away, rather than continuing voyaging outwards. Yeah.
Yeah, so courage, hey, it's going to be a requirement in your development.
Courage and kindness with yourself, that if you get it wrong, you just pick up and try it a different way, try to be sensitive to why it went wrong, what was really happening emotionally, and persist.
Well, thank you both for coming and have a chat.
Thanks for having us.
Sorry you hang around for a while before you did.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Great to be with everybody. Yeah. Yeah. Bye. Bye. Yeah.
Okay. It's a pleasure. It's just chatting to our friends. Isn't it? Yep. Yeah, so the reason why I wanted to give you that experience for two reasons. One is so that you could sort of feel the difference, couldn't you, between the character of Annette and the character of Charles? And also you could see that just because you're a male or a female, it doesn't mean that you don't end up with similar problems. And we asked Annette and Charles to come, last night, because we just thought that it would give you some chances to see what it's like if you don't deal with these things on earth. That, obviously you're still going to be able to deal with them in the spirit world, but as they both said to you, it's sort of much better if you can deal with them now, because you then don't have, these long delays in the spirit world where you're quite unhappy. And, as they said, they were, 500, I think it's 560 something years old they are. And, a lot of those years were spent in sadness and attunement and not in joy, particularly the first 100 or so for both of them.
Yeah. After that, they're pretty happy.
They started to be happy. But, it's sad that, most people on earth have to go through, usually finish up going through more than 100 years of hell first before they start to become happy. So yeah. Franz?
Just for the understanding, how would you discriminate between regret and true repentance?
Regret is a non-emotional state. So you end up just feeling morose every day, just feeling morose. It's sort of very similar to sadness that's not grief. You just feel sad every day, but no change happens. So these kind of feelings are showing you that you're not yet processing something. And also you can stay in them for quite long periods of time. Sometimes I've seen some people stay in them hundreds of years of time. So you can stay in feelings that are not actually processing, but actually are they're quite stagnant periods, and they're not actually processing anything emotionally because you're not yet brave enough to actually go to the gut-wrenching emotion of it yet. But you just feel, sad all the time, or in his case, he felt periods where he, and some of it, like he mentioned, regret, but sometimes he had it for 20 years, regret.
Yeah.
before he felt something.
What I felt from him is like, he'd be crying and crying, like, I wish I didn't do it. I wish I didn't do it. I wish I didn't do it. And then he realized, no, I did do it. And I have
why?
to feel,
And I got to feel why.
I did it, and that I did it, and that it harmed people. It's sort of the difference between sort of wishing you didn't, and you can even cry. He said he was crying in that place, but it wasn't the release of acknowledging that he had, and that it was
Taking
pain.
responsibility.
It wasn't true repentance about the act.
Yeah.
It was just regretting that you performed the act. But that's not the same as realizing all the consequences of the act on yourself and others. And
Yeah.
all right, well, it's getting pretty late now, and we do have some time restrictions. By the way, we must say, if you don't get out of this place by 6 p.m., you're going to be locked in. So we do have to make a bit of a shift with regard to that. What we wanted to do is just maybe have a few minutes, maybe till 4:30 or something, where we talk to you a little bit about some plans. And also, Pierre reminded us quite a number of times, the red box you see up the back is a donation box. So if you want to put cash in the donation box, you can do it there. If you want to donate to us but not cash, then do it on our website. So it's donate.divinetruth.com is what you go to if you want to do a donation, and you can do it with a credit card or whatever. And the only reason why I mention that is because I'll forget to do it later.
Yeah.
And
can I just say thank you to everyone who has donated to us?
And
so
also
appreciated.
your donations are what make these events possible. Obviously, we don't have the funds to pay for venues and pay for travel and all those things. So your donations make all that possible. So also, secondly, hopefully you've enjoyed yourself, even though we've talked about serious subjects. Yeah. And do you feel you've been benefited from them? Yeah. So that's the important thing, isn't it? With spiritual progress, we need to do things that we feel will benefit us. There are things Mary and I are trying to get done in Australia where we can spend a bit of time with you guys, even if we're not here. And so one of our friends has allowed us to set, we don't have fast internet where we are. So one of our friends has brought her home about 20 kilometres away from where we live, and she's given us 2 of her rooms. One room is for tech and the other room is for a studio, where we can actually get online and maybe talk to groups of people overseas. So if people overseas, we haven't completely set it up yet. It's still like, at the moment, I'm the only person who's setting up tech, so it really depends a lot on how much time I have. But what we're hoping to do is set it up so we can sit on our lounge, and you guys can sit, in a home somewhere and around a telly or something, and maybe have a camera there. That would be helpful for us to see who we're talking to. And we can talk to each other even if we're not here.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to set up.
So if you're experimenting with God's way and you have questions, and or you're studying different things and you have questions, that hopefully we can have some contact with you. Yeah. We can't do it one-on-one, so it would have to be with small groups of people.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be like a presentation that's recorded and published. It would be, we might record them, but it wouldn't be sort of like get up and give content presentation. It would be more like question and answer and discussion of certain themes that you might be, as a group of people, struggling with or having questions about. Yeah.
So the issue, though, of course, is that we are going to be travelling 6 months of the year. So 6 months a year, we can't do that anyway, because we'll be travelling from place to place, and we don't travel with the equipment that can allow us to do that anyway. So you need to learn to take the opportunities, both with each other, but also whenever we do come, to take the opportunities to, if you want to continue to receive new information, just take those opportunities when they arise. Part of the thing we also have been wanting to do is obviously set up what similar things that we have in Australia in different countries overseas. But as I said earlier, I think before we started the session this morning, it really is going to depend on the condition, the soul-based condition of the people who we can leave in charge with it. And at this stage, We don't see anybody who's of a condition that we would be confident leaving them in charge with, like a God's Way venue or something like that. So until those things occur, it's really all about what you can personally do in terms of your own development, in terms of your own progress. And that is going to be driven primarily by your own sincerity, isn't it? Like we are not going to have much to do with you, obviously. The more people we meet, the less time we can spend with each person. That's sort of how it works. And so we in the end, we can't really physically have a lot to do with anybody if we want to share divine truth with everybody. And so it's going to require some diligent personal effort on your behalf. And what I find quite interesting is that most of you might not realise, but in the spirit world, it works exactly the same as that. It's going to be diligent effort on your behalf. And, as you can see, even when Charles was progressing towards in the natural love way, he had to put in a diligent effort. He had to go to school. He had to learn. He had to find out things. And then when he progressed in God's way, obviously it's very similar, but a bit different, because it's all about learning about your emotions and learning about feelings and developing that relationship with God, but still learning how to do these things. And that's going to require your effort. And there's not much Mary and I can do in terms of ensuring that your effort is sincere. That's going to be your role. That's going to be your desire. So one of the things Mary and I don't want to do is get tied up just helping individuals or groups of people with their personal issues, because we do feel that each of you are responsible to deal with those issues. And what we're trying to do is provide you with the tools so that you know what to do and you understand what to do. And also, if we need to, provide you with correction when you try some things and they don't work, and we can explain to you why they don't work. And this is more like what we want to do with you, rather than sort of having these. A lot of people ask us for personal sessions and all these things, and we don't find them beneficial at all, for a lot of reasons, but the main reason is it's a very ineffective use of our time. Because obviously we want to share truth with thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, and if we do it one at a time, then we're going to be here for millions of years. If you think, 8 billion people divided by 1,000 people a year, how many years are left? That's
1,000 people a year is a lot of people too.
That's a lot of people too. So we can't. Our role is not going to be becoming your personal mentors. Does that make sense to you? And this is where self-responsibility is so important for you, to develop the strong character trait of self-responsibility, so you take responsibility for your life and your actions, and also responsibility for your relationship with God and your desire to have it. That is all a very necessary requirement on God's path. Now, in some groups, there will be different sort of format than what we've been doing with you, and we're hopeful that some of the people will record those things too. And we are going to do recordings, but we are not sure when we're going to be able to get them to you about those things. So, as I said, Mary and I have quite a busy schedule. We're visiting 14 different places. We're doing 3-day seminars for the most part every week for the next 4 months. It's a very busy schedule, considering we also have to travel to the locations. We need a bit of rest time. We need to get a bit of exercise. So we find that we've got very little time, aside from these seminars, the way this particular trip has been organised. We're hoping the next trip, which we're hoping will be the same time next year, so in the summer period of your European summer, we're hoping then we might sort of be able to stay a longer period of time, but in more like in one location, where we might drive to some other locations, or mainly stick around the single location. And at this stage, we're thinking that Portugal will probably be that location, but we'll see. We're not certain. For you guys, travelling, I suppose, a day in a car might seem a long way, but for us, that's almost what we do when we drive to the nearest city. So, you know what I mean? Like, for us, driving 1,000 kilometres a day is not a big thing. But I understand that for you, some of you guys, it might be. But sometimes, if we can negate our travelling time, it means that we have more time to spend with you. Does that make sense? So if we're travelling every week, we lose 2 days a week travelling, because we've got to pack up our entire setup, pack up all of our clothes, pack up everything, and that takes tomorrow. So that's what we're doing tomorrow. And then the next morning we get up quite early. We have to be at the airport around 7 o'clock, and we're off. And then by the evening we'll be in Innsbruck, hopefully. As they say, God willing. Then we've got to unpack everything, go shopping, get all the food. We don't have an entourage of people looking after us or anything like that. We do all that ourselves, obviously. And so that takes a day or so, and then 2 days later we're doing another event. So during that time, I've also got to upload all of our audios and stuff from this event. Internet is quite slow upload-wise generally. So that normally takes 2 days in itself to do. So I have a computer at home that just is uploading the whole time we're there at a certain location to back up the data, because, you know, we don't want to lose our discussion with you, so that at some point you'll be able to go back to it and you'll be able to enjoy, you know, the discussion again, and also have a lot of times there's things that you forget in the discussion that it's great to be able to go back to. So that's our goal. Our goal, hopefully, is to be able to get some of this material out. But because we're doing it every single week, it's pretty much impossible for us to get it out at the moment. Yep. So Emma, you want to ask?
I was just going to say I'm going to most of the talks, and I'm going to take audio recordings.
Yep.
And I'm going to forward them to Mia,
Yep.
who's got a YouTube channel
Yep.
where she's going to upload them.
Yep.
So perhaps if Mia could put her YouTube channel up on
So
the
that'll be
board.
sort of bootleg audio recordings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, what we're doing is encouraging everybody, like you guys have been doing, just putting your phones by a speaker and recording the event too. Many of you have been doing that. And we encourage you to share them as well. So a lot of the progress of divine truth in the first century is all sort of word of mouth, you know, like people talking to other people. And you've got the ability to talk to other people, share this with them, share that, just give them a recording, see what they think, that kind of thing. And, you know, this is all ways that divine truth, the educational principles of divine truth will be more exposed on earth if we all participate in that regard. I don't know if there's much more than that we need to say. Is there?
No, I don't think so. There's more things we could say.
Yeah, there's a lot more things we could talk about, and I know many of you sometimes are bursting with questions about what we're doing in Australia and other things like that, and we'll try to share those occasionally with groups of people depending on how much time we have. But we felt for you guys, we felt the material that we've covered with you was the most important things to cover with you before we moved on to our next location. And we may finish up actually discussing very similar things at Innsbruck as well. And so you'll get sort of a different slant on a lot of this material if you listen to that material as well. And as we go, the discussions you'll find that will be different. The groups are different. The spirit influences at each group are different. And so generally, even if we might even start out having a discussion about the same things, it often turns out to be different. And so we are on this trip trying to focus people on relationship with God and the emotional, you know, developing the soul emotionally so you can have your breakthroughs with God, because it's your soul that is communicating with God. So, you know, we want to really focus our attention on those teachings in this particular trip, but how that's going to look with each group will obviously depend greatly upon the interest and the development and the desire to participate of those particular groups. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, I would like to hug you all. Yeah.
Pierre, you want to ask?
Is there something we can do to sort out the room or to help
Yes.
cleaning
Yes, so
out?
that's what I was
Yeah.
going to say. So we have to be out of here by 6 sharp. Jesus and I actually have to pack up a lot of the stuff ourselves. You
Because
guys
we have
can't
to
really help.
unpack at the other end, so we need to know where
and
everything
it's all
is.
precision
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah.
The best thing you could do is just to please make sure you have all of your personal belongings out of the room.
Phones,
Yes.
you're not going to be able to come back
Phones,
tomorrow
there's
for
been
them.
a few phones left over,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also just pick up any rubbish, tissues, or
Yeah.
you can make it easier for the people who are going to clean the room by just putting all the glasses back in the one spot and all the bottles.
Yeah.
You could check in the bathrooms that there's no major messes and things, just to be respectful to the venue.
And also, after we finish now, you're not going to be able to come out and see you later.
Then that's why I'm like, stop talking, Jesus.
Because we don't have the time to do that and do pack up.
Can I just say, we're going to do the pack up straight away. If you are hanging around once we're finished, I would love to hug you.
But
Because you're all beautiful.
you may find it
but-
is more like 5:30, quarter to 6.
Yes, it's
by
going to
that
be
stage.
it's going to be an hour.
Yeah.
So totally understand if you just want a virtual hug and love you
yeah.
guys and great to meet you all
Yeah.
and just you're
Yeah.
precious. So yeah.
So we would like to thank you for coming to participate, because we love sharing divine truth with you.
Yeah.
So for us to share it, we need an audience. So thank you for being our audience. It's really enjoyable to meet new people and to also feel each of you as well in different ways.
Yeah.
And to start to get to know you on a more personal level.
Yeah.
Of course, many of you think you know us because you've seen us on your tellies, but you'll find that you probably don't know us as well as you think you do either.
Yeah.
And so having these personal interactions is also helpful in that
And
regard.
we're a changing equation, aren't we? All of us. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's lovely to
Yep.
meet you all.
If anyone would like a group photo, maybe outside before we go.
Oh, what if I just take a photo right now from here?
The problem for us is that everything you guys want is another thing that's going to take us away from what we have to do.
Hang on. Let's see. With us, I just want you. There's enough photos of me. Okay, everyone wave.
You'll find Mary and I are very resistive to photos.
Yeah. Here, you could jump in the front there.
No, I don't want to.
Yeah.
There's enough photos of us.
There's many photos.
There's
of
many
us.
photos of us.
No. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks, everybody.